What up, our little honeydews, and welcome to Sippin N Bitchin, where the drinks are icy and the book talk is spicy. We're your main bitches. I'm Sam.
And I'm Steph. However, this book, not as spicy as it is icy. Ah, wait, that actually does fit. That does fit for this book.
Good job. Good job.
It's a little rude. That's just a little rude.
I'm proud of you.
Okay, so this book is Cass's POV, essentially
From the
a culmination
first
of
book.
like all this getting to know Poppy situation up until this point. So we're really actually just gonna focus on mostly present day things that are new, theories that arose or that came up while we
A
were
rose, yeah.
rereading. Yeah. In my head, I don't know why that didn't look right. While we were reading this book,
And there were a lot of
and
them.
then um something else. So
Yeah, no, you're right. Mostly focusing on the present day because I mean, most of Cass's point of view is basically what we already knew, is that he fell hard fast because that's our Cass boy. The only thing that like I think is worthy to note of is that you just get to see in his flashbacks the behind the scenes of like how much he and Kieran talked behind the scenes, how much other characters that we know are brought up or mentioned or brought in. Um you get to kind of see some of the special moments between them from his point of view. But
exactly.
otherwise that's yeah, it's good to look at, but we just really wanted to focus on the present day stuff and the stuff that's keeping the story going forward.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, so we'll talk about some theories that we have and some other stuff. But jumping right into the present, so there are 12 present day parts as Cass is doing like talk. Essentially, Cass is talking to her because there is this worry that she's not going to remember them when she wakes up from her stasis, which is how this book opens. Essentially, is Poppy wrecked some bitches and killed his bitch. Thank goodness,
Oh,
pouring
but
one out
Callum
for
got
no one.
away.
Callum got away and all this whatever. But toward at the end of the last book of their story, um life was restored to our beloved homies because essentially they
Yes.
were like, you're gonna need help. You're gonna need the strength of all.
All
So
of them. Yep.
that's what they did. Sarah and Niktos are no longer sleeping, which is super exciting for us, but also the implications that arise, like the
Other
implication.
other gods are waking up all over Solus and Elysium and wherever they're sleeping. It's you
It's
don't really
scary.
see any of it, but you like the characters
They
feel
feel it.
the
Yeah.
effects of them waking up and stuff, and it just like hypes up that anticipation for the next book.
Oh, 100%. And then Millie and Malik are MIA. We learned that Niall was sent to go follow them. Colas doesn't have like a corporeal.
Corporeal.
No, ain't no way
Corporeal.
that's how it said it. Okay, hold on.
Corporeal.
Oh, is that I thought it was corporate anyway.
No, it's
Doesn't have a
corporeal.
I hate it here. I hate it here. Just pretend I pronounced it right. He doesn't, but he's awake and free. So he doesn't have a form, but he's awake and free. So that's scary. Poppy's eyes have streaks of silver in them. She has fangs now.
Nectus
Excitement.
is here.
Our honey homie,
Reaver is gone. He took Malik to Elysium
Mal.
because he's no Malik is the son, Malik is the god.
I hate it here.
I know.
I
I know.
hate it here. y'all know who we're talking about when we're talking about it, but like it's fine.
But Reaver took him back home, which I'm assuming honestly that that's where Sarah and Nyctos's first priority will be, is making sure he's okay, and then Nectus takes Iris back once they find him.
Correct.
So that's probably like how they're saying like they haven't shown up immediately, as they're making sure. I have a feeling that
The
waking
sons
up and
are
all the
okay.
gods waking up, there's some they gotta like do some management on their side before they can just jump.
Housekeeping. Some
Yeah.
housekeeping things.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Um, Poppy is cold, not warm. We don't exact like Nectus makes this comment about how we don't necessarily know with her new form, her new power, her new
Hmm.
everything, if that's a good or bad thing. I think it's very much like a is it Spider-Man? Yeah, I'm gonna say Spider-Man. Like with great power comes great responsibility. Like you
Hmm.
could choose, or even Anakin. Like you could choose the light or the dark side. Like if you feed
Right.
into the evil kind of thing. I hope that that's not the direction that this goes.
Right. Because we learned from
However,
the other series that a primal of life and death is not supposed to, like, those two
this.
essences are not supposed to be in one person because of the power it gives them.
So there was something toward the end of the book, and we'll get into it, that I noticed that was said, and it was about Satoria.
Hmm.
And I think it's going to be an interesting little tidbit that we'll go over. Um, and then so Nectus and Cass are also having this discussion, and Nectus makes a comment that Cass is just like who he's descended from. I don't know if Atis is alive. Is he alive? What's the tea? What's going on? Is he one of these
Yeah.
guys that woke up? What's happening? I'm really excited to see how this next book ends and how
Yeah.
this one begins. Um
Same.
yeah, so Penelope woke up, um and there's this whole big
Oh,
bless you.
I
There's
meant
this
to
whole
mute. My
thing
bad.
this whole thing about how Poppy is like essentially immortal, and all of them aren't used to her power being powerful, so they're like shielding her, and it's like he's like, that's so cute that you're shielding her when she's the one who would probably survive like
Yeah.
anything bad happening.
Yeah.
um
He loves that, honestly.
yeah, and when before Nectus takes Iris back to go to ground,
Oh,
um he knows who Poppy is. He asks about Millie. He
that moment
apologizes
is
to
so sweet.
Nectus about Jadis. Like, so we learn where essentially where Jadis is. Um,
Oh, him
and
apologizing to Nectus too, man. Like
it's
that
so
whole
tragic.
moment is just so like heart wrenching.
Even in his really bad state where he's been not, he's
Been
not all
neglected
there.
for so long.
He's still making a point to be like, Nectus, I'm so sorry, kind of thing. So then Iris goes into stasis, Poppy goes into stasis, and Nectus like kind of just tells Kieran and Cass like she might lose her memory. Like she might not know who she is or who anyone around her is. So like talk to her. So they take
Yeah.
her into Wayfair. She's in this guest room, and this is how essentially this retelling of Cass's POV starts going into detail throughout the whole book. Um and then we go into present 2, and he was just discussing how like he thinks Victor could sense his intentions, which
Hmm.
Victor being Victor, he had to have, because he
Oh
knows
yeah.
all and he's the OG, he has all of his memories. Like there's no way Victor didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
Um and I think this is a really good illustration of how Cass, not like the not mortality, that's not the word I'm trying to say, but like it's like humanizing him, because he starts, you could see the shift, especially as this goes on and he's retelling everything, how he sees her just as she was portrayed, like this object, this pawn, this feeding into all of the bullshit essentially that the Ascended are kind of talking about.
Yeah.
And he was like, I hadn't even heard you speak. And he thought she was a submissive creature, and like obviously
Oh, honey.
plot twist, she's not just as submissive, like she up on all that. Um
Imagine thinking Poppy's submissive. That's great.
honestly. And he was like, I had all these preconceived notions about you, and like he has this realization that like he needed to, like, it made him the weak one because he just had all these notions. No one really talked about you, and he just needed her to be the enemy or weak. It made
It
everything
was
that he planned
easier.
easier. And I think
Yeah.
that it's funny, spoiler, I guess, for the last book, even though we talked about it already. Um, like with Nyctos and Acardia, it's so easy for me to like equate it's imagine you don't have your heart and like
Mm-hmm.
he just is like numb through this whole thing and then as he's like growing a new heart as like he gets to know Poppy. I like to equate it even though he has a heart and he loves her obviously, but whatever.
Right.
But that is like throughout this whole thing you see the pivotal points in which like his internal struggles, and I think that that's why this book is so important. A lot of people like probably I don't know if you're not into different povs of essentially the same story, you you might skip this book or you might just kind of cliff notes this book like we're doing, but
Right.
we've already read it twice. But I think this is so pivotal because you get the background, like you said, like Kieran's in this book in his conversations with Kieran, we see so much more of their bond because a lot of the Poppy POV was like, I don't understand how they're bonded, but
Right.
like Kieran just seems to always know stuff. And we
Yeah.
learn a lot about that here. We see a lot more of Delano, Emil, Niall, um, and it's very you just see how loyal you see the loyalty within them all too. And I
Right.
know that Poppy saw it obviously, but like it's to a deeper extent because he is the person they're loyal to.
Correct.
And I
Yeah.
think that's
You get to see more his dealings with the guards and how he got to where he got. And I think the one thing I like about this story is a lot of like POV retellings does the whole book that they're retelling, like start to finish, every interact, like they do the whole story again just from someone else's perspective. And that on me is draining.
100% because you already know what's going to
And
happen.
exactly. And so I was worried when this book came out that it was going to be like that. And I was like, Jennifer, don't do this to me. I love you. But if this book is like that, I'm not sure if I can like stand it. But I love how she chose just different aspects to do instead of the whole thing. She was like, okay, here's stuff from just Cass's side that we never got to see from Poppy's side, but here's some special scenes to the readers that everyone always wants to know in certain situations, like I wonder what he's feeling at this point. I wonder what this looks like from his side. And so she gives us like some of those pivotal scenes from how his side and how he's feeling.
Yeah, she also like his pivotal. We also see like which pawn, not pawns, but like which pieces he moves, or like
Mhm.
like in times when he's not with Poppy and she like wonders where he is or what he's doing. Like we
Yeah.
see those moments and those help shape the rest of the story.
Yeah, like you would never know that she had an ascended following her back from the Red Pearl if you didn't have his POV telling you that.
Yeah, it was very like you see the manipulation turn into caring, turn into relationship develop. Like it's like the
Yeah.
whole it's like the pieces of the puzzle are starting to fit together.
Yeah.
Um, so then we go into present 3,
Ooh,
trigger warning.
big trigger warnings.
Self-harm trigger warning. We're just gonna say that right off the gate. Um, Cass talks about the emotional toll that him being captured had on him. He talks about hurting himself because it gave him an escape. It made him
Mhm.
feel it was the most unhealthy way for him to process the
Yeah.
situation, but that is how he chose to process it. He saw clearness, he felt relief, and instead of sleeping around, essentially he's like, instead of sleeping around, I hurt myself, which
Yeah, he said that he realized that other than sex and drugs and things like that, he found a quicker way
yeah,
to help get him out of that mindset.
which obviously he even says it didn't last. It was only another escape, except I was now hurting myself instead of hurting me. And the tragic part, this is the most tragic thing that from this chapter that I well, one of the most, the whole chapter's tragic, is he knew that he was weakening Kieran by doing this.
Mhm.
And he was like, even that wasn't enough for me to stop.
Yeah.
And I think
He
that that
said
is
he was
such
too
a,
lost in his head.
yeah, I think that's a great illustration of like people who struggle in this manner. I think that this is, especially since it's like fantasy and like obviously it's not super realistic.
Right.
I think this is the most realistic and like you could get because it's like you understand the implications that your actions have on other people,
Mm-hmm.
but when you're struggling, it's hard for you to break through that.
Yeah.
And I like how yes, this is hard for some people to read, but I also can respect the fact that she included this because it makes it more relatable in a world full of fantasy and obviously like the morally gray
Right.
characters and the loving the daddy, like all of this, like it makes it more, hey, I could be this character.
Right. I think she handled it very sensitively. Like she didn't draw it out too much. She didn't make it the whole story point, but she did it in a way that was so impactful that a lot of people, whether you're that family member that had someone that did that and you felt the pain of watching them go through it, or if you are that person who went through it and you knew you're hurting those around you, but you had nothing else you could do to help yourself. Like, no matter what part of that situation you're in, she handled it in a way that someone's going to feel something and it's going to impact them. But she didn't linger on it or make it crude or anything like that, which I thought was really well done.
Yeah, and then she also in the same chapter, we Kieran and Cass go into this back and forth about the whole thing and discussing like he was in pain. Like Kieran obviously understood,
Yeah.
which Kieran is fantastic, but they
I love.
also mention Shay and he was like, does she know the truth about it or something to that effect? And we're like, what truth?
We're
Which
like, we know about Shay. What are you talking about? You told us about Shay.
yeah, so then this is where me and Sam went into like a kind of tangent spiral theory situation because we obviously know what happens to Shay, but clearly there's more to the story.
And when she
So
says like a tangent spiral, I want y'all to, I'm setting the scene for you. My family's driving home yesterday from the beach. We went to an hour and a half away to the beach. I'm listening on Audible to this because I got to get the reading done somehow. And I get car sick if I read. And so we're
same.
texting each other, but that wasn't enough anymore. I get a
No.
call from Steph, and we're like, my husband probably thought you thought I was crazy with what we were talking about because I had my headphones in, so he couldn't hear anything but my side. So, but we're like going off about this for like a good like 20 minutes about what's going on. And my son in the background is acting like he's in the conversation. So I'll say stuff to her and he'll be like, really? Are you sure? Oh, that's big. Like things like that.
Him with all my heart. But
Oh,
like, okay, so here are some rolling theories because then
yes.
also fun fact, in case you didn't know, I'm not going to take full credit for anything that we're about to say because I did some research and you could in her Facebook group, JLA has a Facebook group. There were theories that were already shared, so I don't want to take credit even though I didn't look at it beforehand, but whatever.
We're not smart enough to come up with this stuff on our own, you guys.
No. So, one theory that I had is that Shay was pregnant
Mm-hmm.
and either had his child and there's some child floating out in the universe. Seems unlikely given the situation,
Oh, that'd
but
be
possible.
interesting.
She was pregnant and obviously he killed both of them.
Mm-hmm.
Another working theory is he ascended her and then killed her.
Right.
And then the other, what was the other theory? There was one more theory.
I know there's one about like
And then she's not
there.
dead.
Oh yeah, I said what if she's not dead, and that was an intense thought to have. Yeah, I have in my head like either the things you mentioned or like we know Alistair is a son of a bitch and that he
Oh, yes.
would do anything to get a wedge in there and we think Shay was a part of that. We already knew she would do anything. It mentions that in this book later on that she would do anything to protect what she's going after. And so we think she was working with Alistair to get to Cass. And when Cass was captured, she may have tried to wedge her way in with Malik instead. And so there's something going on there, which
She
I don't think
also,
Malik would have done anything, but
maybe she dropped some truth bombs too. Like maybe there's like a whole wheel here where like
oh,
she was working with him. She dropped some truth bombs. He was like, fuck off. Ain't no way this is true. Killed her. Kind of vibe.
Right.
That also could happen. Anyway,
It
those
could
are
not
our
have been
working
as
theories.
it could not have been as quick of a death as he made it seem like to Poppy. He could have drawn it out. Like, I don't know. We know how Cass can get. So I don't know. There's a lot of thoughts to be had.
A lot of thoughts. Um, but yeah, so that's another like big thing that I think this book we can take away from this book.
Mhm.
Um, when we go into present day 4, yeah, Roman numerals. She uses Roman numerals and my brain
I know.
doesn't always. Um, but it mentions like how Lord DeVries is like Cass doesn't remember him being there when he's captured, and he has this realization of like, what else don't I remember? Like, I thought I would never
Mhm.
forget anybody that was involved, and clearly, like, he did. So he, when you have trauma, you like to block shit out. So, like,
No.
I
Sorry.
just, I just think, that also brings up another point. Like, what else did he block out, or what else doesn't he remember from that time? Like, there could just
Right.
be little tidbits that are like helpful information in the long term. Unclear. Um, and he like comes to this realization that his brother wasn't necessarily chained, but like he had this invisible like chain to Millie because they're heartmates and
Right.
that. And Cass is struggling a lot emotionally as he's like retelling all of, well, in general, but as he's like discussing this, he's talking about how he doesn't understand how Poppy forgives his brother for what he did or what he planned to do to her.
Mhm.
And he knows that Poppy probably wants him to forgive his brother because she has, but he's still struggling. He's not ready to do all that. And I think this is a great illustration of her strength because it's like he he wasn't even really affected. It was her. So he's mad at Malik because of
Right.
the situation, and she is like, I'm here. Like nothing. I'm
Yeah,
oh and he's like, but he fucking wanted to kill you, bro.
I
And
think I think it's a lot easier for Poppy to be able to have that cuz she's lived with those nightmares her whole life. So she came to terms with them a long time ago even if they still like haunt her. Um and so I feel like she just has that understanding of, if there's this big threat, what wouldn't you do to try to overcome it kind of thing. And she's not as attached to it. Like, yes, she was the one attacked, but when it comes to the whole Cass and Malik thing, there's just so much extra in that dynamic between the two of them that's easier for Poppy to be like, he's your brother. I know you care about him. It'd be easier if you guys could get along. But there's a lot of baggage in there that they have to figure out. And they kind of start that later on in the other presents. But it's there's so like there's just so much, there's many more knots that need to be untangled in that situation than what Poppy had to untangle.
yeah, and I think I think that that's why he is so burdened. And I really
Yeah.
hope with the next, well, the next book, not the next book, but the book after. I hope we
Yes.
like
The next
see,
Poppy and Cass book.
yeah, that could have been an easier way for me to say it. I hope we see some sort of redemption arc. I mean, I feel like we have to at this point. I do
Right.
think, and I think we'll talk about it here in a little bit. Um, but I really hope we get a redemption arc, and I'll go into it when we get to the present
Yeah.
part that I know it's in. But present 5 is really just Cass coming to the understanding that like him and Kieran really didn't know what she was capable of when they first met. They clearly underestimated her. He
Big
it
time.
was the shift of his mentality of like he was no longer seeing her as the maiden. He like she was becoming Poppy to him. Like he was
Hmm.
humanizing her, which I think is a pivotal moment just to kind of mention of how like when he's retelling everything, like you do learn, you see it.
Yeah.
You and like I think it's so great how she did this though, because you see it, because Kieran knows, obviously. Kieran knows all.
Oh yeah.
Don't even try to hide things from Kieran.
Don't question Carrie, just go with it.
You see the internal struggles that he goes through, and like you
Mhm.
can see him fighting it. It's like, I clearly am protective of her. I'm clearly like wanting to like take care of her, but it's like, I have a job to do. I can't let my people
Yeah.
down. Like you see it from his point of view. I think it's beautiful. I think it's
Yeah.
so great that we get to see that, and it does it in a different way, where it's like you see Poppy also internally struggling, but like differently,
Yeah,
and she
different
doesn't know the
struggles.
extent because of the whole situation. But 10 out of 10.
Great job.
Present day 6. Cass, listen, I don't understand why Cass thought this was a good idea, but he's, having
Mhm.
flashbacks to, Britta and his, that whole situation, and he's talking to Poppy obviously, and he's just like, I hope you don't remember that, and Kieran's like, she's gonna
Of all
remember
the
that.
things, yeah. You're
And we see her, she's looking a little bit more rested. The shadows under her eyes are
Mhm.
beginning to fade. He
It's
remembers
giving Twilight when Bella is going through the
why.
days and slowly things change.
Why? Why did
That
you have to
just
do a
popped into
Twilight
my
reference?
head. Listen,
I
there's
guess I can't
vampires and
judge.
werewolves in the story. Like, where else am I supposed to go?
Spider-Man, like
Anyways.
me. What do you mean?
Okay,
Anyway,
Spider-Man doesn't have someone who is turning immortal and in the sleep and slowly getting better. Okay?
anyway, and then he's like, right, remembering how, or he was really, yeah, he was remembering how Poppy had given him peace with just his touch, and he was just like,
Mhm.
I can't believe like you did that for me, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, And then he's getting an update from Kieran about the Ascended, and some of them are listening to what they're doing. Essentially, they're not trying to address people yet, because they're waiting for
Yeah.
Poppy to wake up. They're trying to get their shit together before
Yeah.
like talking to anybody, or making statements,
Yeah.
even though that's what they need to do. It's like they're biding their time as much as they can.
Yeah. Hiding the
Um,
Ascended. Keep the Dissenters are kind of watching over the town to make sure like nothing crazy's going
yes.
on.
Yeah, and Hisa is checking the tunnels.
Yes.
And like Hisa is like really stepping up. She's like bringing Poppy clothes. She's, really holding it down the fort for them.
Love her.
And then present day 7, they have he's having a whole recollection with the diary, and like I think this is a pivotal point in her sexual journey, her discovering her wants and desires and stuff. Cass obviously gets horny.
I love that even when these situations, he gets horny in the worst of times, and he'll even be like,
Listen.
"Now is not the time for that." And we're like, "No, Cass, it's really not."
Not honey, but like understandable, I guess. And then he learns more about the Duke, and Delano's in the room while Cass is like doing his story time for this moment. And Delano learns that killing the Duke wasn't part of the original plan of like him trying to capture Poppy, and like, the OG trading her for Malik.
I
Which I think
love,
is important.
right. No, I agree with that. But I love that in these different presents, it's like Kieran's there, or it's just Cass, or Delano's there, or it's all three of them in there. Like it's Delano's like an honorary member of the trio without being like the in depth of it. But and I love it. I love it so
Well,
much.
that's what I was gonna say too, is I think that this Delano in this whole flashback situation
Mm-hmm.
wasn't very prominent. He
Mm-mm.
was mentioned, he like is subtly there, like meeting, but he is not the bond that is formed between Poppy and Delano. I will say it time and time again, is so beautiful because it's unexpected. In moments like this, where we have a flashback and you see like where Delano wasn't even a main character
Mm-hmm.
until now, like until Poppy becomes more
I think
prevalent
it
with the
really started when they were in New Haven and her and I think him, Delano, and I think it was either Nail or Emil were down in the cells to bring her back up, and Jericho and all of them attacked. In the flashback, I think it's Nail talking to Cass, and he's like, she saved Delano's ass, and she didn't need to do that. I don't understand why she did that, but she saved him down there, and like I think that was a big
pivotal
shift. Like
turning
that's
point.
where it
Yeah.
like shifted to where Delano like had this respect and cared for her.
And I don't know where we would be without Delano, is all I'm going to say
Mm-mm.
about that. And I just got to say, I'm saying it here. If something happens to Delano in the next Poppy and Cass book, I'm never reading ever. I'm never reading ever again.
This
That's not
is
an
your
NXT
warning,
expression.
Jennifer. Protect Delano at all costs.
And then we go into present day 8, and he's talking about like essentially the sense of rightness. Like he didn't understand them being heartmates at the time, but
Mm-mm.
like he had the sensation of rightness, and it was his soul recognizing hers, but he didn't know that that's what it was. Kieran obviously freaking knew. Kieran knows. That's it.
Kieran knew as soon as he started to be protective of her, he was like, "Oh no, this is happening."
Yeah. And then they go into a whole conversation about like what Millie is while they're having this conversation. It's a very random thought because Cass is like talking about Millie and
Mm-hmm.
like the comparisons and stuff. Which brings me to my theory that I said to Samantha yesterday. What if Millie is like a Callum, right? And then the showdown is Millie versus Callum, and Millie's redemption arc is like annihilating the frick out of Callum.
Please do.
And
Okay,
like,
so
yeah.
what's very interesting about the Revenants, other than the fact that we still don't know how the hell they exist, is that the Revenants you come across, they don't usually talk, they don't show emotion. They're basically robots that fight you when they need to fight you, except for Callum, except for Millie, and except for whoever that Revenant is
Who
that
comes
came
in
in
through the
at the end
window?
of the book. Yeah, that's when I really thought of it. I was like, wait a minute. Revenants don't usually do this. Like, they're basically robots. They don't think, they don't talk, they don't really show expression. So, who's this guy for one? But, like, what is it about them that makes them different? Like, I know there's that thought process in the other series that it's like your emotions when you do whatever it is you do to make the revenants. Because obviously there was
Yes.
emotion with Callum, with Colas. There's obviously emotion with Millicent, with her mom.
So who's this other rando?
Who's this guy? Yeah.
The
And what
secret
actually is the
Shay child.
process?
The secret Shay
Oh
child.
my gosh. Could you imagine?
He'll be like, you killed my mother. That's why I'm gonna kill your. Stop.
Oh,
Oh.
oh no. We're probably so clowning right now, but oh my gosh.
But that's a very good point. I wonder. So this is the next question: is do we learn about the revenants in Born of Blood and Ash? Sorry, I had to think of Boba in my head.
Mhm.
Uh, that's what the anyway.
Feel like that.
Anyway,
Oh, I'm
moving
never gonna stop thinking about that. Continue.
on. I wonder if we get the background on revenants in this next book, or if it's going to be like a cliffhanger saying that we find out in Primal. I don't necessarily think it'll matter. Like maybe I think it's pivotal to understand how Callum came to be. But in my head, the story of Sarah and Nyktos goes beyond that.
Yeah.
And I
This is
think
gonna
that when they meet together, they learn
that's
it
when it's all
together.
gonna
That's in my head, it's a you learn it all together versus a separate Nyktos Sarah situation. That's just me, but maybe I'm wrong. Like
or we
maybe
could learn parts of it in
and they
Born.
connect.
Or no, yeah, Born, and then in Primal, it like all like it's like the prophecy. There's pieces of it that
Half
you
of it.
learn in this, and then all like comes together and you really understand. Oh man,
That's a good thought.
it's a
Yeah.
lot.
Anyway,
These
and
book titles are gonna get confusing. When did she stop making new titles and go Blood of Ash, A Soul of Blood and Ash,
but it
or
all
Ash
makes
and Blood,
sense.
A Born of Blood and Ash? It does, but I'm just like, there's a lot of Ash and Blood to remember.
I know. I know. That's why I
I
had to
love
think
it.
about the acronym. Um and so also before we wrap up this present day chapter, something that Cass says is the line between right and wrong is a thin one that is often crossed without intention or knowledge. Most of us live with one foot planted on each side, which goes back to
Ooh,
not knowing if Poppy,
it's
like,
gonna be good or bad.
Poppy, as we know, is good.
Yeah.
But also in situations in which ether is very strong, her will, her will to reel it back or to hold back or to not use her ether, or
Mm-hmm.
like like in some situations it could sway her. So I
Yeah.
think
It's
this is
so
like a slight foreshadow, but
Yeah,
also
it's so interesting because, like, as Poppy, she believes in respectful deaths and that everyone deserves that.
correct.
And then Ether Poppy is, y'all are gonna die. Like, I'm fucking you up. I don't care. And then as she like progresses, she starts to like herself starts to be a mix of those. Because there's a point where she kills someone. She's like, screw a honorable death. He doesn't deserve it, kind of thing. Which is a big shift from her. Which is so interesting because Sarah is the opposite. She's like, kill everyone, I don't care. And then she has to learn to not do that. Like, there's such a balance between the two of them. And it's so interesting to think about. This is stuff that's like coming to me as we're talking. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how, because she has the life essence in her, but she has the death essence in her.
I
Like,
also wonder, with her being joined with Kieran and Cass, what that balance is.
mm-hmm.
I think we should talk about that at the end based off of what happens at the end, which
Yes,
obviously everybody knows, but like I'm interested
that's
in
the
that.
right part. That's the right part to talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah. But going into present day 9, this is a whole quote that I copy pasted because I think this is such a very big, going back to her discussing mental health. I think this is a very important moment in this book
Yes.
where Cass says, I used to tell myself that what was done to me didn't matter because I'd processed it, dealt with that shit, but telling myself that proved I hadn't really dealt with it. Because what I experience will always matter in some way, sometimes insignificantly and barely noticeable, and other times it can ruin your entire fucking day. But that's okay, and I mean that. Because saying someone chooses to live in the past, rehashing bad shit done to them is bullshit. You can't choose that. Things inside you, parts of your mind and body, that you don't control decide that. And it took a hell of a long time for me to learn that what I can control is how I act in response to those memories, to those emotional wounds, how I treat myself, how I treat others because of it. It's not as simple as saying that. I know nothing is simple.
Can I just get
As
that plastered on my wall?
I was just about to say, as someone who so strongly struggles with this in a
Mm-hmm.
real life situation, this here, this quote makes this book 10 times more relatable, despite it being fantasy, despite an impending war, despite um period. This quote is an embodiment of a lot of feelings that people have, and I think it's an important quote. It's an important thing to realize. It's an important I'm glad Jennifer put it this way. Like, I'm
Yeah.
glad she put it in this book, and I'm glad that it ties into the overall story,
Correct.
obviously.
To everyone's story, even in the other books.
Correct. I like that it fits the plot and it's not just a little to like appease people. It's
Mhm.
genuinely a pivotal cast point. Because I
Yes.
know every time we're talking about Poppy, she doesn't feel like, or even Sarah doesn't feel like her life matters, doesn't have choice, doesn't have free will. All these
Right.
things, like, they have their own internal struggles. This right here is a difference in the character development, but also so relatable.
Oh,
I
oh,
I
100%.
want this so like not feeling your worth is obviously like a universal thing, but and like obviously it has a relatability to it when we're reading the other books.
Right.
But this right here is like a trauma encompassing blurb.
Right, because
Like,
with Sarah and Poppy, they don't have choices in their lives. Neither of them
correct.
ever grow. Cass had choices. He got to live a life that the women never got to live. He got to have friends and run and do things. And so this is from the point of view of someone who grew up with a certain belief system in their head, being told that this is what we believe, but they still had that choice to believe it. and is learning that everything they believed is not necessarily what they thought it was, and they're having to rethink what they think, and they're having to look back on what they've been taught and realize that it's not what they thought it was. Like, as someone who is currently deconstructing their past like I am, with leaving like the church that I left and like rethinking everything that I've thought, especially the like people don't choose to rehash the past. When you're having to unlearn everything you thought you knew, you have to live in that past, because that's where you have to unravel it all and think about what actually happened and how it actually impacted you in the long term. And so that's Castile being like, I grew up a prince. I grew up believing the best for Atlantia. Then I met this person that made me think maybe that's not what I believe. Maybe that's not what it's supposed to be. Things can be a different way. And he went through shit and he has to think about like the choices he made, everything that he's gone through to get to that point. Like, you don't have a choice to but to live in that past to unravel all of that.
Yeah, and mm. And then we go from this point, this
Mhm.
relatable choosing and stuff, and he is trying to he like starts to understand how Isbitch like did what she did in terms of like
Mhm.
her sac quote unquote, in order to bring Colas back to power, she chose to sacrifice someone she loved, and like she didn't choose her daughters, like she chose the love of her life kind of thing. And like
Right.
he is trying to kind of fathom that in his, whatever. And then he goes in like there's these whole what ifs, like if Isbeth and Malik like made different choices, what would happen if they just went to go live their lives? If essentially if one or two choices were different, how would this have shaped up? Which is something that we do in our everyday lives. Like,
Right.
what if I made this choice instead of this choice? Or what if I did this differently instead of this? Like, what would the outcome be? So I
Correct.
think it's a very relatable spiral in which he goes down.
Yeah.
Because I think like just the what ifs, bringing that up is
Yeah.
very.
I like him bringing up Isbeth and her choice between her heartmate and her daughter, and how she chose her daughter. And it says part of like, because it says that like she chosen to sacrifice someone she loved and decided to let her heartmate go over her daughter. Her daughter. I couldn't wrap my head around the slice of decency in Isbeth. And then later it says he's talking about the love of a parent, and he says that love made one capable of the greatest acts of selflessness, but it could also cause one to spiral in the depths of evil. So it's very much a like, it shows a different side of love. Like, he even says, he's like, I can't imagine, I love Poppy, but I can't imagine that love for a child. And
Yeah.
as a mother reading this, it's so relatable, of like, you'll go to hell for your kids if you have to. And so it's another perspective of love, another perspective of relationships. And I like that she makes these books, mental health, like parents, like she makes it relatable to anyone who
Despite it being
reads it.
fantasy.
Yeah, despite it being fantasy, someone is going to find something in these books that attaches to them.
Exactly. And I don't know. I think that's really important to note because not all fantasy books do that.
Mm-mm.
Some are literally written to have you escape into this world with these characters, which this book does obviously, but it doesn't it like has bonds with people, but I don't think I don't think every single one touches on these kind of issues. So,
I
I
think
respect
it's
that.
fantasy, but it gives you emotions that people can relate to, which attaches you to the fantasy more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Um, so then we're going into present day 10. Kieran and Delano protecting Poppy in their woven form at the foot of the bed. Love to see it. I love
Yes.
our little protectors, our
I love how they
little
go
woven
sleeping from
protectors.
Kieran beside her to Delano at the feet, to in the instant something seems wrong, they're both up and like facing the door, standing over her.
Yeah.
I love it.
In this present day chapter, Millie and Malik come back.
Woo!
And Cass
Cameo.
doesn't know how to. He's just like you wanted her dead. Like, why are you like? How could I trust you with her, kind of thing? And Millie's like, I needed her dead, and you know why I needed that, but like, I never wanted her dead, kind of
Right.
thing. It's like a need, not a want. Um,
Exactly.
And we also learn that Millie spent time with Poppy when she was a child, and like Poppy probably doesn't remember it. Um, and Cass asks why she ran, and you see this another thing about Millie with the emotions. She was like, um, she was scared. And Cass is like, well, why are you scared? She's your grandmother, and she's like, we're abominations. And Cass is like, you're not an abomination. And Millie's like, yes, we are abominations. But with the primal of life, it's personal. And I ran because I thought she would take me out. I was afraid. And I think that growing up with Isbitch,
Mm-hmm.
what else is she supposed to think? It is ingrained in your brain that clearly, like, you are not supposed to exist. This is why I think she gets a redemption arc, because it's one of those things where it's like, you can see Millie wants the sense of family. She's
Yeah.
kind of off her rails, but she does want the sense of family. She recognizes where her loyalties should lie.
Yeah.
I truly think she's gonna have such a big impact in the next in Primal.
Yes. I think because I know Jennifer has said, and I know we've talked about this, that the Primal is the last book of Castile and Poppy being the main characters.
Correct.
And I love all the other characters, but if it's not about Millie and her story and Malik, I might be upset. Like, I hope the other characters are in it along with them, but I really want something about them.
Interested. See, but then how would that, without knowing what happens in Born, I guess there's really no way for us to truly know, because like melding of the mind, whatever. But does that mean Poppy Cass die? Does that mean there's just a happily ever after and their story ends, and like, is it like a prequel? Is it like a prequel book where we learn it's a POV of Millie and Malik
Mm-hmm.
while they're with Isbitch during this whole thing? Like, is she saving
I
that?
think,
You know?
I think this is where I think it'll go. I think it's going to be with Poppy and Cass, things are resolved. Like with whatever Colas and everything, they're resolved and they're living their life, so the focus can shift a bit. I think they'll be a part of it, but just as side characters, and that I think it'll be them present day, but with them figuring things out with flashbacks towards what they went through.
I'm interested if Malik at the end of Primal is going to tell Millie that they're heartmates. Like, I wonder if that heartmate situation
Do
is
you
going to be
think
resolved.
she knows? Like, he hasn't said anything, but do you think she knows? Like, in this chapter, she said she was scared, but it was obvious it wasn't for her life that she was scared for, because she's not afraid of death. She's died so many times that doesn't have an effect on her, whether it's the final kind or not. And
Yeah, but
Castile
I
even said
think
that he realized it was about Malik that she was afraid for.
it's really hard to say. I feel like Isbitch said something, or like she has like that internal like feeling that they feel.
Yeah,
But like with Malik thinking Millie hates him, which we don't know any background on that really, I don't think.
right.
Um, it's hard to say. So, and then I don't know if it's important enough. That's the other thing is it important enough where like one of them risks their lives for the other one, and then it's like a final death in Primal. You know what I mean? Like, one
Who
of them could
knows? Yeah,
die by the end.
they could. They could. We everything is still up in the air.
Ugh. Anyway,
But they're
um,
here. She wants to
yeah.
talk to her. Kieran's naked.
Yeah, so Cass needs to go talk to Malik, so he leaves. He asked Millie if she wants to visit with Poppy. Kieran stays, shifts. She's like, "You gonna put on clothes?" He's like, "Does it bother you?" She was like, "No, it's your dick out, not mine." And I was like, "Okay, cool, whatever." Um,
Respect.
and so then Cass and Malik are out in the hall, and they're talking back and forth, and it's this struggle. It's this brotherly struggle that obviously they haven't. So many years have gone by where Malik was captured and Cass trying to get him back, and he has this moment. It's just like, why didn't you fucking say anything, dude? Like, you could have sent word. And Malik honestly, I had so much respect for him in this moment.
Oh, me too.
He was like, I fucking know, like, I was fucked, Cass. Damned if I did, damned if I didn't. I knew if I told you the truth about what Isbeth was trying, you would have dropped your plans to free me. You wouldn't have gone to her. Instead, you would have come straight to the capital. And if I told you that I joined the Blood Crown, you still would have come straight to the capital under the pretense of doing the same thing. And he was just like, what do you think Isbeth would have done? Like, she would have killed you, dude. Um, and he apologizes and he's like, I'm sorry for what you had to believe. I'm sorry for all you had to do, for the pain, for all the death, for Shay. Now, with Malik coming into the chat, Malik knows all that happened. So now I
Mm-hmm.
wonder if this is like a bloodlust killing Shay kind of thing. But I genuinely like feel like
There's
there's a
has to
kid.
be more to it.
I just feel
Like,
like there's a kid, or like he ascended her.
yeah,
Like it has to be some pivotal big thing that happened because we know about Shay already.
yeah.
And I did put a note here. I'm still interested in why Millie hates Malik, or why Malik thinks Millie hates him.
I think, I honestly think, I think he thinks there's no other option except for her to hate him. Because
The
we know that
deserving thing.
Isbeth, yeah, we know that Isbeth knew about them being heartmates, and and she used that against him. She made him do things, and sometimes it was things that involved Millie. So I think in his mind, the shit he had to do for Isbeth, he thinks there's no other emotion she could feel for me but hate.
Yeah,
Like, I
I
think
think
that's
he's
a
pulling a.
him thought process.
I think it's the whole "I don't deserve you" kind of vibe. Like
Exactly.
there's no redemption arc,
Yeah.
which is why I still think Millie and Malik being in the book. I think they have a book going, but we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
Then Malik drops this truth bomb about Callum. Callum made sure that all of the revenants knew who their creator was, so that those who were loyal to Isbeth, that only went surface deep. They were all loyal to Colas, and the ones we couldn't find, they're going to be a problem. They're going to try everything to bring him to full power and stop anyone who attempts to thwart that. So
Dun
can
dun
revenants
dun.
give him his form? Like, do they all meld together and like together they but they don't have souls. So like really is it like just like you know what I mean? You know how like
Yeah.
typically you drink the blood of whatever and then you get your own form? Like how does that work when
Right.
revenants aren't really.
Or like, is he in a body, but he's just been entombed for so long that we don't know, that they have to find him and give him that strength back by either like blood or something else. But this is really all going to come down to the book coming out next month.
But he doesn't have a
Corporeal.
corporeal form, which is relating to a physical material body. So he doesn't have
Right.
a physical material body. So how does
Do
a
they put him
god.
in the star, do you think?
And they took Satoria out, and Satoria's low key in Poppy because that's mentioned toward the. Anyway, we'll get there. We'll get there. But yes,
Ugh.
I mean
We have one more
possibly.
reread and then the book comes out and we'll have some answers.
Um. So then part 11. Um. The truth, like he's just telling her like the truth, how Poppy finally learned who he was, XYZ thing.
Mm-hmm.
And he like didn't know that he was feeling love because he didn't think that this was something he deserved, which goes back to like everything we just talked about with Malik.
Yes.
Like after all the mistakes, the lives he's taken, the pain he's caused, I really think this is like a brother bonding moment that we'll probably see.
Yeah.
Alistair's mentioned because I don't
Talk
even want to give him the light of day.
about
um and he talks about like the fear about her attack, and he should have known then. Kieran did because Kieran's Kieran.
you saw the
um
panic.
he saw the panic, what he was willing to do to save you. Kieran would have destroyed them for stabbing me, but like Kieran didn't do anything to Poppy. um
And we see that flashback too, where Kieran finds out he was stabbed and he has to hold himself back from that instinct to protect.
yeah, and like he and how Kieran already knew that he was in love with her from that moment. And
We love
I
Kieran.
think this is going to be such a beautiful. There's no way, not the physicality before I say this statement. Obviously, we're about to go into it with this last chapter. But the bond that they have with the joining, I'm hopeful, I would hope but I want to know how this really plays out, especially when she's awake, because going into chapter present day 12, the shadows beneath Poppy's eyes were already gone. Her skin was normal. She she would wake soon.
They could
Um
feel it that she was going to
that
wake
yeah,
soon.
they were like the instinct, which is from their bond. Um and then he talks about like how he'd fallen in love with her, and like by the time they made it to Spess's end, he knew he was in love with her.
Hmm.
Um and then he compares, this is interesting. There are similarities between your actions when we were surrounded and what Shay did. She too had been willing to do anything. But I'll tell you about that when you wake, what really happened. And like what she would do for Atlantia, what she would do for Cass, what she would do for Alistair. Like I feel like there's a lot of layers here for
Yeah.
this.
It's just
So
she'd
I'm
been willing
interested.
to do anything for
Period.
herself,
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like
for like
for
what was
like
her
what?
plan? Oh, yeah.
We just need to know.
Yeah.
And then we have this revenant coming through the window. He falls asleep. This revenant comes through the window with an ancient bone dagger, which, if you remember from the last book, that's mentioned as a weapon. So bones of the ancients, sharper than bloodstone, harder than shadowstone, and deadlier than both, able to kill a god with just a prick, and can incapacitate a primal. So then
Mhm.
Cass gets stabbed with or what stabbed with it, and like he can't move. He's like paralyzed.
Yeah.
And then through we learn through the bond, or that's quote unquote what we learn through this bond. Poppy's still in stasis. Kieran's not here, but Cass shifts into a cave cat.
Yeah. I oh, when he the thing that makes him shift is what gets me like, because this revenant is not only there, he's singing that creepy ass song to Poppy while he's about to stab her.
Which is why I'm like, is this like a brainwashed Colas revenant that has some sort of relationship with one of
Right.
them? You know what I mean? Like I just
Yeah.
feel like there's
There's
some
something there.
hidden tie here with that. Um, but he like shifts into this cave cat, and it's a large black and gold feline with a shoulder height of over 5 feet and nearly double the length, and eyes of a luminous silver. And then Kieran and Emil come into the room,
Mhm.
and Emil's like, "Holy fucking shit, is this a cave cat?" And Cass and Kieran are speaking mind to mind because Cass
Yeah.
wants to eat a meal, but through the bond, they're able to communicate. And
Yeah.
I made this connection. I was like, wait, so they have a joining bond, like a joining communication. So it's not the primal notum. It's not I can't
It's
remember what the
something
other
about
one's called.
them.
It's yeah, it's a joining bond. So then I had this whole tangent yesterday with Samantha. I was like, wait, so one, I wonder if I don't think so, but I wonder if Nectus in some way is bonded to Sarah and Nyctos. However, I think he would have been bonded to Ethos, and upon reflection, I think he would have been bonded to Nyctos' dad, not
Right.
Nyctos. But maybe that changed. Maybe Reaver's bonded to them.
Well,
Mm,
okay, so he was bonded to them because we learned that the Draken are bonded
to
to
her,
the true primal of life. Ethos was the true primal of life at one point. So
but
yes,
that's a
there
different
was that
bond.
bond.
But that's a
I,
different bond.
I don't I don't know about that. Like this bond is different, yes. I'm just saying
Yeah, yeah,
all
yeah.
the Draken are bonded to the true primal of
Correct.
life.
Correct. But I
Um,
think so. I don't know if the Drake, I don't know if I can compare a Draken bond to this joining bond, but essentially, I'm thinking like there was another. There's no way this is the first time this kind of bond comes up
correct. But
because
now I'm
others have
wondering,
joined.
Sarah's the true primal of life, but Poppy's the true primal of life and death. So are they both going to be bonded to the Draken? Does she supersede the primal of life because she's both, and the Draken are only bonded to her now? Like that's going to be interesting to see when they wake up. Like,
They're
does
also
Sarah still have that bond with them?
I think Nectus is always going to be loyal to Sarah and Nyctos.
Of course, of course. I'm just wondering about the Draken bond in general, though, because Poppy had what it took to raise them because of who she is. But what does that mean for Sarah's bond with the Draken as the true primal of life?
I wonder what happens with the ether from Sarah, though. I'm really interested in what happens in Born because the whole Satoria thing and the ether and the and the where did we go here?
Right.
Where is this? And then I know Satoria exists and interesting. Anyway,
Yeah.
the rhyme returns. Cass wants to eat a meal, whatever.
Kieran talks him
And
through it.
Kieran talks him through shifting back. He's like, "You will it, like you
Right.
whatever, whatever." And then he's like,
Like you
"Shit, that
use
shit hurts."
compulsion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and then silvery light sparked. He shifts back. They're talking. Silvery light sparks racing across the ruptures in the stone. Moonlight pulsed and held, revealing the shape of a circle with an overlapping pointed cross in the center. A symbol in Old Atlantean. No, it was two symbols. The circle and the line through the center were life. The one from the top represented death. Life and death, blood and bone. A glow appeared beneath her flesh, lighting up the delicate network of veins throughout her entire body with ether. And so Poppy wakes up and she is now the primal of life and
Her
death,
eyes are
love
pure
and bone.
silver.
No longer
Like there's
green.
no green. No green. Which is interesting because Sarah, when she ascends, like we'll learn about this in the next book, she still has the green with the silver. And they thought it
But
was because she was mortal.
Poppy is now life and death, so I think that supersedes the green. I think
I know, but still, all the other primals have it. So why did Sarah's not? Because it's still the same thing. They were both mortal and then not. Like I get it, she has more ether, but it's just very interesting. But yeah, she wakes up. But I think it's interesting. I'm still on this bond thing
that's
because
fine. We can
Kieran
discuss
and
this bond now.
Kieran and Cass. He even says says it has to be the bond forged during the joining. It connected the three of us, somehow giving you the ability to shift like me. But then wouldn't you have shifted into a wolven? And he said no. Her father shifts into a cave cat. My ability to shift might have come through the connection with you, but it was her ether. That's what I felt. Primal ether. I
I
bet
wonder if
that's
we could
what
shift into
Nectus was
both.
referencing, right? And then they
Well, no.
realize Poppy's going to be happy that she can shift. But even Cass is like, I wonder how Kieran is going to be affected. He says, I wanted to know if this bond had changed Kieran somehow. There's a whole lot of things I wanted to know.
So I don't think it would have changed because Kieran has been in his wolven form. So I don't
Right.
necessarily that part would change. Oh, thank God I didn't get that tattoo yet. That
No, but
scared some.
but he has ether now. So how is the ether with Kieran's bond is shifting? How is the ether going to affect Kieran? It's affected everyone else so far. Is he going to become full seer now? Like the ether's in him? Like he already
Oh,
had that in him?
he could be a new wave because his
A new
intuition's already
oracle?
there. Because Jasper is the same way, but Kieran's
Mm-hmm.
was like more subtle. So that could happen in theory. I think these are the things. So we're not going to learn that until Primal.
Mm-mm.
There's no way we're ever she's not going to give us any tidbits. I already know. Also, fun fact, we've read the first 6 chapters of Born already.
And we hate ourselves for it. It's
So
intense.
Born comes out in 2.5 weeks, about 2 weeks
Yeah, about 2 weeks.
when
Yeah.
we're recording this. We've read the first 6 chapters. We are going to do
The
the
things we've learned, you
last.
guys. The things we've learned already.
Yeah, so we've already learned some things, but we're gonna do the last book, this last Sarah Nyctos book, so that we can go straight into the next
Yep.
Sarah Nyctos book,
We
which
want
is the
that
last book,
storyline fresh in our head
and
to
then
shoot
wrapped
into
up.
this. Yeah.
Correct. So that is what's next on the docket. So now, right now,
Mm-hmm.
we're paused on Poppy, and
We have
yeah, we're
finished Poppy and
paused
Castile as far as they have books out.
until next year, probably.
So we have so many questions, but we have to shift gears and think, hey, we have things we need to know. Throw that behind us, pull out the other story. We're here. Let's get these answers first.
Yeah, so this is, I think she did this really well though, because this wraps up this storyline. We now will have the context with this, with not with the next book, but with Born, we'll have
Mm-hmm.
the context we need to understand, hopefully, why Sarah is written off the face of the planet, what Poppy and Cass will need, why they resurrected all these people. Like, yes, they
What
need
they did to
numbers, but
Colas
there's
and what that
something.
means for if he gets rezzed, like he
Yeah.
does. Like we're gonna
So
know the extent of that.
I think this is beautiful because we'll have a lot of context.
Yeah.
I'm
I think it's
afraid.
going to destroy us. Yeah, exactly. It's going to destroy us because we're going to be reading this and we're going to be like, oh, uh, oh no.
Oh,
Like it's going to be that kind of thing. And if you guys, like we mentioned Jennifer's Facebook group earlier, she's very active in that Facebook group. Like
she
she's a
really
big a
is.
part of it. And it's horrible for us readers because she has Born coming out, but she's been giving us tidbits from
Primal to
Primal. So she's giving us these sneak peeks and these teasers and they're killing us. And then we have to remember that's not the book coming out.
yes.
uh,
Um, but yeah, so this episode obviously is dropping Wednesday the 31st if you're listening to
yes.
this. And then we are doing episode 8 the week
I
of
think it's the week the
the
new book comes
12th.
out is when,
The week the new book comes out, we'll be doing the quote unquote last Sarah Nictus book up until this point.
because that'll
And
give us
then
2 weeks to read the new book and to cry and process and then emotionally be able to talk about it.
correct. So we are going to do the last book in Sarah Nictus' story
Flesh and
in the
fire.
month of
Fire in the
August.
flesh. Fire in the
No,
flesh.
no, no. The Born. We are gonna do Born by the end of August.
Oh,
So you have
yeah,
until
yeah,
the
yeah.
end of August. Our for that episode's gonna drop. It'll probably be in multiple parts. So just
Oh,
prepare for
yeah,
that.
definitely.
Ain't no way. It's a bigger book.
It's the biggest one she's written.
So
Not the
that
biggest one we've
gives
read, but the biggest one she's written.
correct. Which gives us so much hope for Primal. But we will be back in 2 weeks. Obviously, this is only a one-parter. Go us, high five. Woohoo!
We
So we're
did it,
going to
guys.
be rereading a flesh.
The flesh
Fire
in
in
the
the
fire
flesh.
in the flesh. I did it too, and it's even right there that I can see it.
We're doing a fire in the flesh for the week of the 12th. So we'll catch you in 2 weeks.
Yep. And then
And
soon we get to
then
talk about what next books we're gonna do. So that's gonna
yes,
be fun.
it'll be so exciting. We're very
Yes.
excited. Make sure to follow us Sippin N Bitchin on everything.
Everywhere.
And we'll catch you in 2 weeks. Crunch time, because the
Get to reading,
Born is
guys. It's coming.
Born. I know we're gonna reformat the show as we do different books, but
Yes.
with Born, I genuinely think we're gonna have to like
It's
do
gonna
a
be our
whole
biggest deep
new,
dive ever.
like a whole thing.
Cause
Oh my
it's
god, I'm
gonna
so
because
excited.
these other books we can kind of like skim a lot of stuff because we've read it before and we know what's important and what's not. This next book, you guys are gonna be going through it with us. It's gonna be we're gonna
So
pick
great.
it apart and talk about our feeling. We're just gonna let loose.
It's gonna be so great. But yeah, so
Yep.
sipping and bitching on everything. Go do the things, and we'll catch you in 2 weeks. I'll be a whole another year
Bye.
older when you
Oh
listen to me.
yeah. Oh, my best
That's
friend's
yeah.
getting old.
Yeah, that's true. All right, we'll catch you on the next one, bitches. Bye.
Bye.